The Starry Wisdom Church was not 00005's idea of a proper ecclesiastical shop by any means. The architecture was a shade too Gothic, the designs on the stained glass windows a bit unpleasantly suggestive for a holy atmosphere. And when he opened the door, the altar was lacking a proper crucifix. In fact, where the crucifix should have been, he found instead a design that was more than suggestive. It was, in his opinion, downright tasteless, he thought grimly, testing the vestry door. It slid open smoothly, and he stepped back out of visible range, waiting a moment. They were either not at home or cool enough to allow him the next move. He stepped through the door and flashed his light around.
"Oh, God, no,"
he said.
"No, God, no."
"Goodbye, Mr. Chips,"
said St. Toad. Approaching the outskirts of the crowd, Fish and Chips saw a group of musicians who were obviously English from their dress and hairstyle. Their name, he saw on the biggest drum, was Calculated Tedium, and the guitar player had a canteen strapped to his hip. He reminded 00005 of how thirsty he was, and he asked,
"Pardon me, do you know where I could get some water or a soft drink?"
"Take a snort from the canteen,"
the guitarist said affably, passing it over. He pointed to the west.
"See that geodesic plywood down there? It's a bleeding giant Kool-Aid station set up by the kabouters, and guaranteed to hold out even if the crowd doubles inside before this is over. I just filled the canteen from there, so it's fresh. You can get more over there any time you need it."
"Thanks,"
00005 said warmly, taking a long, cold, delightful swallow. He had a very low threshold for LSD. The world began to seem brighter, stranger, and more colorful within only a few minutes. The Joker was actually Rhoda Chief, the vocalist who sang with the Heads of Easter Island, and who had inspired much admiration in the younger generation, and much horror in the older, when she named her out-of-wedlock baby Jesus, Jehovah, Lucifer, Satan, Chief. A former processine and Scientologist, currently going the Wicca route, the buxom Rhoda was renowned through showbiz for giving head like no chick alive, a reputation which often provoked certain Satanists on the Linda Lovelace for President committee to send very deadly vibes in her direction, all of which bounced off due to her Wicca shield. She was also possibly the greatest singer of her generation, and firmly believed that most human problems would be solved if the whole world could be turned on to acid. She had been preparing for the Ingolstadt Festival for several months, buying only the top-quality tabs from the most reliable dealers, and she had crept into the geodesic Kool-Aid station only a few minutes earlier, dumping enough pure lysergic acid diethylamide to blow the minds of the population of a small country. Actually, the idea had been subtly planted in her consciousness by the leader of her Wakan, an astonishingly beautiful woman with flaming red hair and smoldering green eyes, who had once played a starring role in a black mass celebrated by Padre Pederastia at 2323 Lakeshore Drive. This woman called herself Lady Velcour and often made jokes about her memories of 18th century Bavaria, which Rhoda assumed were references to reincarnation. On April 10th, while Howard made his discovery in the ruins of Atlantis and Tlaloc grinned in Mexico, DF, Tobias Knight, in his room at the Hotel Pancreston in Santa Isabel, concluded a broadcast to the American submarine in the Bight of Biafra.
The Ruskies and Chinks have completed their withdrawal, and General Isumo Puta is definitely friendly to our side, besides being popular with both the Booby and the Fang. My work is definitely finished. I'll await orders to return to Washington.
Roger. Over and out.
Frank Sullivan, capitalizing on his only real asset, was operating in Havana as a Cuban Superman, using the name Papa Piaba, when the Brotherhood spotted his resemblance to John Dillinger.
Gosh,
he said when they made the offer.
$5,000 just to take two ladies to a movie one night, and it's only a practical joke, you say?
It'll be a very funny joke,
High Capo Mocenigo promised him, and the Smithsonian acquired Mr. Sullivan's asset as one of their most interesting relics. We'll kill the old red rooster. Hagbard was accompanied by Joe Malik when he returned to the stateroom.
You go to the beer hall in Munich,
He was saying,
and steal any item, anything at all, as long as it's obviously old enough to have been there the night he tried the pushk. Then you rejoin the rest of us in Ingolstadt. Understood?
Lady Velcour looked around the geodesic Kool-Aid dome. A man in a green turtleneck sweater and green slacks caught her eye, and she walked over to him asking,
Are you a turtle?
You bet your sweet ass I am.
He answered eagerly, and so she had failed to make contact, and owed this oaf a free drink also. But she smiled pleasantly and concealed her annoyance.
Robinson and Lehrman of the Homicide Department actually started the last phase of the operation. I was in New York to see Hassan I. Sabah X about a new phase of Laotian opium operation. I had just come from Chicago after staging that conversation with Waterhouse for Miss Cervix's benefit, and I decided to check with them for those little nuances that can't go into an official report. We met in Washington Square and found a bench far enough from the chestnuts to give us some privacy.
Muldoon is onto us,
Robinson told me right off. He was wearing a beard. I figured that meant he was currently in a Weather Underground group, since he was too old to pass for under 21 and get into Morituri. "Are you sure?" I asked. He made the usual reply.
"Who's ever sure of anything in this business? But Barney is pure cop through and through,"
he added.
"And his instincts are like dowsing rods. Everybody on the force knows we've infiltrated them by now, anyway. They even make jokes about it. Who's the CIA man in your department? That kind of thing."
Muldoon is on to us, all right.
Lehrman agreed.
But he's not the one I worry about.
Who is? Being the first pentuple agent in the history of espionage was starting to grind me down. I really wasn't sure which of my bosses should hear about this, although the CIA certainly had to be told, since for all I know Robinson and Lehrman might be reporting to them twice, having another contact as a fail-safe check on my own integrity.
The head of Homicide North,
Lehrman said.
An old geezer named Goodman. He's so damn smart, I sometimes wonder if he's a double agent for the Eye themselves. His mind jumps ahead of facts, just like an adeptus exemptus in the Order.
I looked up at the statue of Garibaldi, remembering the old NYU myth that he would pull his sword the rest of the way out of the scabbard if a virgin ever walked through Washington Park. "Tell me more about this Goodman," I said. I didn't want to kill anybody at this point, and a bombing would only get Muldoon in. Even having Malik disappear might only bring in missing persons. Then I remembered the dummies used by the clothier on the 18th floor, right above the confrontation office. Burn the dummy just right before setting the bomb, and it might work. I drove back toward Manhattan whistling, "Ho, ho, ho, who's got the last laugh now?"
The bomb went off at 2:30 a.m. 1 week later. Simon, leaving O'Hare Airport, where it was 1:30 a.m., decided he still had time to get to the friendly stranger and meet that cute lady cop who had so cleverly infiltrated the nameless anarchist horde. He could get her into bed easily enough, since female spies always expect men to reveal secrets when they're in the dreamy afterglow with their guard down. He would teach her some sexual yoga, he decided, and see what secrets she might slip. But he remembered the midnight conference at the UN building after the bomb was set, and Malik's grim words.
"If we're right about this, we might all be dead before Woodstock Europa opens next week."
Are you a turtle?
Lady Velcor asks again, approaching another man in green.
"No,"
he says.
"I have no armor."
She smiles as she murmurs,
Blessed be.
and he replies,
"Blessed be."
Doris Horace heard the voice behind her say,
"And how's the Miskatonic Messalina?"
and her heart leaped, not believing it, but when she turned it was him, Stack.
"Jesus,"
one Superman said to another.
"Does he personally know all the good-looking white chicks in the world?"
The Senate and the people of Rome were still tussling with Attila and his Huns, but Hermes Speed King Trismegistus, drummer with the credibility gap, watched placidly from only a few feet away, seeing them as a very complicated, almost mathematical ballet. He was concerned only with determining whether they illustrated the eternal warfare of Set and Osiris, or the joining of atoms to make molecules. He knew he was on acid, but what the hell, that must have been the Kool-Aid, another of Tyle Eulenspiegel's merry pranks.